Hey guys, so today we're going to talk about a book called Of Pearl and Leaves by Rosalyn Briar. It's a YA fantasy novel based in its own world. These worlds are separate. This world is separated into separate kingdoms. The important kingdom in this story is Norella Island. Her father is king. She's a princess. Our main character, Ingrid, and Ingrid is in love, but she's in love with a priestess. And as the only heir, her mother died in childbirth with her younger sibling, and so far her stepmother has been unable to produce a baby. Since she's the only heir, she has to marry. She has to produce heirs of her own. And so her father informs her, along with his advisor, who, when he's first presented in the book, he's presented as kind of smarmy. Like, he looks at her breasts and he's kind of smug and he always seems to be eavesdropping. And they tell her that she doesn't have a choice. She has to choose a suitor. They are going to invite them out for her 21st birthday. And on the day of her birthday, when they have a ball, she has to pick which one of them she wants to marry. So her and her girlfriend come up with a scheme. They're going to create a contract, and if the suitors want to marry her, they have to agree to this contract. And most of the things are pretty normal. Be good at sword fighting, sailing because they live on an island, fishing because they live on an island. But one of the stipulations of the contract is that if she dies, the husband has to be buried with her at sea, because it's an island, so they do boat graves, meaning that even if he's still alive when she dies, he goes with her into the sea. And they concoct this because they figure, well, there's no way that any suitor would agree to this because it's just silly. And she gets away with this because her great-grandmother was able to make her own marriage contract, so that way, because at the time the islands were afraid, because she was the only heir, that anyone she married would try to take control of the kingdom from her. And so creating her own marriage contract gave her the ability to keep control. And so that's what she does here, Ingrid does, is to try and maintain control. And ultimately her goal is to scare the suitors away. Well, the suitors show up, and a priestess dies. One of the high priestess, I believe, dies. She's Lilura, which is Ingrid's girlfriend, is her kind of adoptive mother. They're twin sisters, Viviana and Karina. And they took in Lilura and raised her from a baby. And so she ends up pulled into this mystery because a priestess is dead. So there's a murderer around, and she was poisoned, and no one knows how she was poisoned. And so they start an investigation, kind of do a lockdown. There's a resting, which is the priestess's way of honoring the dead. They sit for 7 days, which in this cave, which is kind of gross. One thing to keep in mind about Norella Island, the reason Norella Island is so special, is they have what's called these living waters, which causes healing. And the living waters actually gives them the ability to heal small wounds, prolong life. Something that wasn't really explained very well in the book, because there's magic, and there are gods. They have their own gods. Norella Island is actually named after one of the goddesses, Norella. But one thing that's not really explained is sorcery. So Laura is introduced as being a sorceress, on top of being a priestess, but she's not an anointed priestess, because her and Ingrid are together. Anointed priestesses have to be chaste, and since they are not, and they were caught, she's a priestess, but she's not an anointed priestess, so she kind of does her own thing. She doesn't live in the convent with the other priestesses. She actually lives in the palace with Ingrid. But her and Ingrid have this special connection, and for the first part of the book, you're kind of confused because, like, she can sense Ingrid's feelings and her aura, and she gets really affected by how Ingrid feels, and so she asks for a space a lot. Like, she kind of pushes herself away, like, oh, I just need time, I need to be alone, and it's really odd at first. And one of the things that's mentioned is the war of the halflings. Halflings are harpies that, you know, winged people. And so the War of the Halflings is mentioned, but not a whole lot is gone into, like, why there was a war so much. It's kind of sort of mentioned that halflings have are more in tune to magic. But a sorcerer comes with one of the princes, Prince Soren from Aegis Island. And Nilsen is his advisor. Now, Nilsen used to be the advisor for Ingrid's father. Tried to save Ingrid's mother when she was dying in childbirth and failed. She died, and the father blamed him and banished him. And so he went to Aegis Island, became their advisor. Well, they sent him back with Prince Soren to kind of advise Prince Soren, hoping that because he knows Ingrid, he'll have a little bit of an insight into her and be able to help their son, you know, win her hand. Which, honestly, he does. Like, the presence that Soren presents her, he presents her with a puzzle of Norella Island, and then tells her that, you know, I'm going to keep this piece and we'll build it together, kind of thing, which was really good on his part. But the thing that you have to realize about Soren is he has really bad anxiety. Like, he is, when you're first introduced, he's very confident sailing. Like, he's at the stern, he's sailing, he's doing it, you know, he's very confident doing that. But the minute that it comes to him meeting the princess, he's counting the alphabet backwards, which is then later explained that he counts things to calm his anxiety because he has really bad anxiety. And he stutters throughout the book, which is kind of cute and kind of endearing. He is not your typical hero. He is not the typical, oh, this guy is so confident, he knows what he's gonna do, and he's so strong. He's basically a normal person who's kind of cute. It's adorable. And the thing that is interesting to find out is that Ingrid actually likes him upon first meeting him. She actually, from the way that Laura describes it, she has a color for him in her mind. So, like, she doesn't normally apparently have colors for people except for Lily. And so Laura is kind of thrown off because there's a calming blue color to him for Ingrid, and it upsets her. And in the first half of the book, we see the toll that magic takes on Allura. Her hands are burned, and Ingrid mentions that she, has had to pull crystal shards out of her before, and then we come to find out that her back hurts a lot. And at first, you think, oh, that's the toll of her magic, etc. But no, Allura is half-halfling. Viviana explains when Laura goes to visit her, and tells her, because some of the things that she's been feeling, all of the information they have on halflings is basically banished because halflings have the Jorsti Empire, which is supposed to be like the big strong empire. They've been trying to exterminate the halflings. And so Allura has been hiding her halfling heritage. She hides her wings, basically using magic, so that and it's not explained how they're hidden. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, her and Ingrid, have full-on naked sex, and Ingrid gives her back rubs, but she has these wings that she's hiding. So it's like she uses the magic to pull them back into her body, is the best that I could figure out is what she was doing. And the sisters, the twins, had taught her how to do this so that way she could live a normal life, even though it hurts for her to do so. And one of the things that Nilsen explains is that magic comes at a price, which everybody agrees, magic comes at a price. But that price doesn't have to be at the cost of yourself, which is how Allura's been doing magic, is at the cost of the pain to herself, headaches, blackouts, that kind of thing. And Nilsen shows her that you can actually take the cost out of something else, like a tree. You touch a tree and cast your spell, and the tree loses life while you were fine. You're channeling the magic. And she's nervous about using that at first because the twins have raised her to have respect for all life, but she kind of figures that, well, this is a necessary need to do this. Nilsen offers to mentor her, and one of the things that Viviana tells her when she goes to visit her is that Harpy, and this is where we get the explanation of Harpies. So Harpies have one soulmate, and they mate for life. And if the mate dies, the Harpy dies. If the so generally for Harpies, they die together because one dies, the other dies. They're tied together. Their heart breaks, shatters, they die. They have what's called a soaring, which means that that's when they realize they've met their true love. And so Lilura's heart soared for Ingrid, and so Ingrid is her one true love. But Ingrid is a human, which means that she might not stay in love with Lilura, and her not staying in love with Lilura could kill her. Could kill Lilura, not Ingrid. And so Viviana explains that there is a curse that she could use that would break the bond between her and Ingrid, but it would make it so that neither one of them could fall in love again, which would be awkward for Ingrid, especially if she picked one of the princes. And so Viviana gives her the scroll and tells her that, use it as a last resort kind of thing. While she was there, Lilura was talking to Viviana about something that Nilsen and her had found. Nilsen offered to mentor her because he was a sorcerer, she was a sorceress, but she was self-taught. And so he's offering to mentor her, teach her. He took her out to the woods with her 2 snakes, Opal and Obsidian, and had the snakes lead them to this cave. And he used his magic, showed her how to take the magic from a tree, the light from a tree, to move this boulder. And she goes into this cave, and it's odd at first because she reveals that she's a harpy. He kind of figures it out on his own, calls her out on it. She reveals that she's a harpy, and he's like, oh yeah, that's so cool, your wings are so pretty, touches her wings. Seems very nice. Nilsen is just presented this whole time as this really nice guy. It's so odd. And so she flies into this cave and she finds these leaves. And so she takes these leaves, she plucks the leaves, and she comes back because basically Nilsen cryptically tells her, bring back what you find in the cave. So she brings back these leaves, and he's like, I gotta show you the power of these leaves. And she's like, what are you talking about? And he slits his own throat. And she freaks out because he's gonna die. And then she remembers that he told her the leaves have healing properties. So she takes one of the leaves, puts it on his neck, and it heals, and he's fine. And he says the leaves have the ability to give life. And so then she's really super confused because the leaves have what now? What are you talking about? And so he tells her that his snake had discovered them many years ago, and he had done multiple experiments on them. He had used them to try and save the queen when she had been, dying in childbirth, and it hadn't worked. And so he thought there was something wrong, and he wanted to prove that it wasn't his fault that she had died. And so he got Lilura to help him. Well, Lilura tells Viviana about the leaves, and Viviana kind of freaks out. And I was like, nobody should have that kind of power. That's a power over life and death. That's too much. And Lilura burns the leaves that she had brought with her. So then she goes back to the palace, and at this point, Ingrid has gone on a date with Anders from the Jorsti Empire, and he's the charismatic, handsome, oh, he's so good at everything guy, and he's an ass. He just tells her that they're gonna consummate their marriage before they get married, and that she's gonna be his, and she's gonna do what he says. So she dumps wine in his lap and leaves. This leads to Soren worrying that he's going to do something wrong. And during the next trial that they have to do, which is sailing, Soren actually ends up saving one of the other princes, who turns out that he doesn't know what he's doing and almost drowns. And then come and find out the dude can't swim, so then Soren has to, pull him. It's a mess. So the people nickname him Soren the Savior. And he ends up on the second date with her because she requested it, and they have a good time. They invite Lilura to go with them, and they go to the convent, and then they go on a picnic, and they're all joking around, having fun. But Lilura keeps sending mixed signals. Like she's okay one minute, then she's not happy the next. It's super odd. Soren can't figure her out. Ingrid is distressed. On top of this, there's a doppelganger Ingrid's been seeing in mirrors and in her dreams that keeps trying to, from what I can tell, keeps trying to tell her something. Like Ingrid thinks it's trying to kill her, and doppelganger is supposed to be a harbinger of ill kind of thing. But every time the doppelganger comes to her, she's trying to communicate something to her. And then Viviana is found dead, stabbed. And so, of course, now Laura's kicking herself because she burned those leaves. So her and Nilsen go back to the forest. Laura goes down into the cave and the leaves are all gone. Someone has come and destroyed them. And so at this point, she's really upset because if someone had destroyed the leaves, she could have saved Viviana. Because she has found in her experiments that the leaves work within 24 hours of death. They'll bring them back. So they go for Viviana's resting, and Karina's launching. So Karina gets launched into the sea. Viviana's laid out for her resting. And Laura and Ingrid get into a fight because Laura tells her that, she's going to pick Prince Soren, and she's jealous, and she needs, asks for space again. And the issue that Ingrid has is that Laura keeps asking for space when Ingrid, personally, if she were in that position, she would want someone to be with her. And it's because Laura hasn't told her what she truly is, and that she can feel Ingrid's emotions, and that Ingrid's emotions are overwhelming her. And then Ingrid and Soren go on another date, and he makes her macaroons. Nilsen actually kind of tricks Laura into helping Soren plan the date out, and so she tells him what to take that will get Ingrid, make Ingrid happy, and so he does. But Laura spies on them and sees them kiss and freaks out and gets mad, and Ingrid goes to her like immediately after the kiss. Like she's like, I have to talk to Laura. And she tries to explain to Laura that she wants both of them. She wants Soren and she wants Laura, and she wants both of them in her lives. And Laura's not listening. She was like, you're going to break my heart. I can't stand this. You don't understand. And she leaves. I think at this point, Laura explains that she's a harpy and shows her wings and tells her that her people are hunted, and that the way that their love works is that her having sword for Ingrid's the only one she could love, and tells her about the curse, and Ingrid begs her not to do it, and Laura basically tells her it's the only way, and she leaves, just out the door, gone. Ingrid can't find her. Everybody's on lockdown, so the guards won't let her out to go hunt for her. In a storm, nothing. So the following day, Soren and Laura again Soren and Ingrid try to go find Laura and are stopped because they're still trying to find the murderer, because now 2 priestesses have died, and things kind of come to a head when Laura is found dead, stabbed to death in a clearing full of fire. And so now Ingrid's like, well, that's it. The love of my life is gone. I don't know what to do. She's got Soren there to comfort her. They end up building the puzzle together. At one point, she comes to him after she has another date with Anders, and it goes just as awful as the first one. And so she comes to find Soren, and they build a puzzle together. And then, but in this time, she's still grieving, and she doesn't know what to do. And she has a dream about the doppelganger, and the doppelganger tells her to get Laura's necklace. So when they go to Laura's resting the next day, she takes Laura's necklace and swaps it with her own. And her and Soren had found Laura's journal. Talked about the leaves. Laura had taken some of the roots out of the cave and tried to propagate them. And when she left, she took just the leaves that had budded. But she left her journal behind, and it had a cipher in it. And so Soren showed her how to figure out the cipher, but they had to figure out the word, and she could not figure out the word. It took her all through the ball to figure out the word, right? And at this point, she decides she's going to pick Soren as her husband, and they get married at the ball. And he had made a ring for her from 2 seashells and a pearl, so that represent all 3 of them, him, her, and Laura. And then she figures out what the word is for the cipher. They start decrypting the code. Come to find out, the code is basically about the leaves, that they have life magic, that it works within 24 hours, that sort of thing, right? So the following day is when they find out that Laura is dead. They go to her resting. Ingrid switches the necklaces. And then when they get back to the palace, she goes to Soren's room because she needs to talk to him. And Nilsen is the one who answers the door. And he's like, oh, Soren stepped out. Is there anything I could do for you? And she starts talking to him about Laura and being a harpy and, you know, some of the things. And Nilsen has macaroons, which he says Laura had baked for him. And he goes, I just can't help myself. Here you go. Share with me. And so she takes one. Now, we were told earlier in the story that the chef had told Ingrid that Laura hadn't been down to cook in ages. So after she takes a bite, she starts wondering, well, when did Laura go down and bake these? And then it hits her that she's been poisoned. And Nilsen, you know, I'm sorry, princess, but this has to be done. Your family has to pay. And so then this is where the sorcerer's lifespans kind of come into play, because apparently Nilsen's been alive long enough to have served her great-great-great-grandparents and was in love with her great-great-grandmother Suniva, and had wanted to marry her, and then got sent off to war with the halflings. Like, the sorcerers all got called to the front lines, and when he got back from the war, not only was his leg injured, but Suniva had married someone else. And so he blamed the halflings for that, and he blamed her family. And then he was disgraced again when he could not save Queen Freya when she died in childbirth. And so basically he's come on like a revenge plot to the island. And this folds into kind of where he ends up wanting to resurrect the god of death, Hel, which is Norella's twin. And it's one of the scrolls that Viviana had shown Laura, but that scroll was missing. And so they had to go to the convent, figure out what scroll was missing. And it was Soren who saved the girls. He figured out that that there were leaves in Laura's necklace that Ingrid was wearing, and so after Ingrid was found dead, she got put in a boat grave, and Soren had to go with her, and he waited until they were out of sight, and then he took one of the leaves and put it in her mouth, and it brought her back to life. And then he steered the boat grave to the convent, and they went and used the other leaf to bring Laura back to life. And then they had to figure out what scroll was missing, and once they figured out what scroll was missing, they took another scroll, the one that would bring Norella back, and they took a boat to the lighthouse, because that's supposedly where the portal was. And they found the lighthouse keeper, who was tied up, and she told them that the portal was actually at sea. And so which means that they got there before Nilsen had figured it out. But when Nilsen found them, he had brought Anders with him. Anders was working with him because the Dorsi Empire wanted to take over Norella Island, and they had taken the king and queen captive. And it was also revealed at this time that the queen was pregnant. And the relationship between Ingrid and the queen, it was super weird. Like, it starts off in the book where she calls her the step queen and is kind of nasty to her. And then later in the book, she's all like, oh, well, I feel bad for her. She lost the baby and she doesn't really talk to me. And we're, if she would talk to me, we could be close. And it's like, okay, but you don't give her a chance to talk to you. Like, you shut her down immediately. You yell at her. You storm away. You don't listen. Obviously, she's not going to want to tell you anything. And then when she tells Ingrid that she's pregnant, they all act like they're this one big happy family. And so while I thought the book was good, I felt like some of the relationships were a little off. And then they end up summoning both gods. And apparently Nilsen had killed everybody that came to Ingrid's resting, or Ingrid's launching. And so a whole bunch of guards and servants and everybody's dead on the beach. And Nilsen tells Hel that he wants the power over life and death so that he can get revenge. And Laura tells Norella that she doesn't want the power of life and death. She doesn't think that anybody should have that kind of power. She just wants to save her friends. And so Nilsen gets rejected, and Laura is given as many leaves as she needs to bring back everybody who died, including Viviana. They actually give her the ability to bring back Viviana. And Nilsen and Anders get drugged to the bottom of the sea by Norella's daughters. And then they go back to the beach and they bring back everybody. And basically what's revealed is that the plant, when eaten raw, if it's eaten raw, it can save you. If it's eaten cooked, it will kill you, which is why Queen Freya died, because Nilsen brewed it into a tea and then gave it to her while it was cooked, so it killed her instead of healing her, which was the mistake he made. And so then they end up saving everyone on the beach, saving Viviana, and Ingrid and Soren explaining to Laura that they want to be a happy threesome together. And then, of course, we get a cute little sex scene between Soren and Ingrid, because he's never had sex before, because he's so innocent and she's not. It's mentioned a couple times she's had multiple partners before Laura. And so Laura kind of gives them a night to themselves, lets them do their own thing, and they hook up. And then, of course, later it's like, oh, well, I can't wait for our night together. Well, then Ingrid takes them to the convent where her father has given her his and her mother's wedding rings, and she marries Soren and Laura together. Like, now they're all three married to each other, which is kind of weird, but that's, you could tell that's where the book was heading the whole time, was that all three of them are going to be together. And that's where the book ties it up, that basically her father tells her that, oh, you're better at politics and been paying attention more than I thought you were. So if you want to come up with a way to stop the Dorsti Empire, just, come up with that, and Oscar and I will make it happen. And of course, then it's discovered at Oscar's secret was that he was in love with Sita, which was the next high priestess after Viviana and Karina died. And he had wanted to disband the priestesses so he could be with Sito. Because the living water, there was, talk that the living waters were not producing as much. Well, that's because Nilsen had basically diverted some of the living waters to grow those plants after he found them. And then it's kind of explained, Laura explains that she went down into the cave and destroyed the plants. And so it was really weird. That part really didn't make any sense, because we're not actually shown Laura going down and destroying the plants. We're shown Laura discovering that the plants have been destroyed and telling Nilsen. And so until Laura revealed that she was the one who destroyed them, I didn't understand that. Like, it didn't make any sense. Who would have destroyed the plants? And I'm still kind of like on why she did it, because she destroyed the plants and then she took a root to propagate it. So why did she destroy them in the first place? I don't know. It was so weird. I struggled to understand that part. But all in all, ended up with a happy ending. And we got the happy throuple, I guess is what you would call it, together, which was super cute. So it's a good story. I really enjoyed the characters. I actually really was upset that Nilsen was the bad guy, because I was kind of hoping that he was going to come in and help everybody and be the one to be like, oh, hey, this is what's going to happen, and the murderer would be somebody else. But no, he had to go be the bad guy. But no, it was a good read. So if you're looking for something interesting, that's definitely one of Pearl and Leaves by Rosalyn Briar. Happy reading!